the Italian Football Podcast.
Let's start with Juventus, the Wednesday evening game at Villa Park. And the game finishes 0-0 again, which is probably not that surprising. It's fast becoming the most predictable result with Juventus this season. It was a bit quite similar, really, to the Milan match at the weekend. More quality in this Villa game than the Milan match, where there was no quality at all. But still, a game of very, very few chances, barely anything really. One big chance each in the game. Conceição's header off a corner, which was miraculously saved by Emi Martinez behind the line. And then a great chance from McGinn, which Locatelli cleared off the line. But apart from that, nothing until the last moment of the game, the last action of the game, where Morgan Rogers had a goal disallowed for a foul by Diego Carlos on Di Gregorio. But apart from that, nothing really to talk about in terms of the actual action. So what there is to talk about, I think a few things from Juventus' point of view that I want to kind of dig deep into now. First of all, I think if we're looking at this purely from a pragmatic point of view of, getting Juventus through to the next round, given the circumstances, and I think as Motta said it in the game, I think it's based just on this game, it's a good result. I mean, Juventus, the number of players they've got out is insane. They could only name 4 outfield players on the bench in this game. 8 players out in total. They lost another player through injury during the game as well, Savona. So it's becoming ridiculous now. Something needs to be looked into this, Nima, about the number of injuries that Juventus are getting, because this isn't just something that's happened this season. This is something that's been going on for a few years now. I mean, remember with Allegri when they were completely decimated as well. Was it last season or the season before? I mean, this has been going on for a while, so I don't think it's related to the manager or anything in particular. That this is a club problem for sure.
It's a J medical problem. It's how they prepare the players problem. Is it the pitch? They need to look at everything because it's silly. It's really silly. I mean, 14 out players going into this game. It's like when you're
15. And two of them are next gen players.
Yeah.
So,
congrats. I mean, it's just it's like when you play Football Manager and like you've got so many injuries and like you just like what is there a virus in the game? Like what? This isn't normal. This isn't realistic. But that's how it felt like. I mean, 14, 15 outfield players, everyone else injured. I mean, I'd like to talk about this from 2 angles. The first, of course, is I want to talk about the positives of this, and you can't go past one positive that really stands out, or 2 positives that for me stand out. And the first one, of course, being that Juventus starting lineup in the yesterday against Aston Villa was the youngest starting 11 fielded by any its Serie A team ever in the Champions League. 24 years and 142 days on average. That suggests that there is actually, this is what we've said. This is year 0. It's a new project. They're really rebuilding, and they're doing it with young players. That's very positive for Juve, and they're doing it with young players who also get results. I mean, they didn't win, but they didn't lose, and that's important at this level. And the second positive thing is 11 clean sheets in all competitions, which together with Inter and Bayern Munich makes Juve the side in the top 5 leagues that have conceded or have had the most clean sheets.
All competitions, that is,
yeah,
right?
All competitions, yeah. That's very positive. 11 clean sheets in 18 games in all comps, together with Bayern Munich and Inter, the most clean sheets. That's very, very.
And they're back to being solid as well. Like after that shaky period, with the 4-4 and the Parma game and these games, they've now had 3 clean sheets in a row and 1 goal conceded in their last 5. So they have sorted out the defense again, despite being, having virtually no options in defence, having to basically play the same players every single. And even Danilo came on and did quite well actually in this game at right back. He actually played quite well when he came on. So defense is good. They were very compact, very solid.
They were compact. They were solid. They found their identity again. I thought Gatti and Calulu together were really good. no, they found their defensive structure again, and again overall over these 18 games, 11 clean sheets. That's very good. Again, best together with Bayern and Inter in all top 5 leagues of all the clubs in all the top 5 leagues across all comps this season. That's very, very good. But the negative, I'm sorry, you can't blame. You can blame, and there's explanations, but Juventus do not in these 18 games, barring Como, and they don't create enough. It's just not good enough. And against Villa, okay, Dibu Martinez makes one of the saves of the season. I mean, 95% of the ball is behind the line. That's a crazy save, right? But they don't create enough. They don't nearly.
That's their only
enough.
chance of the game, and it's from a corner. So
we can talk. We have to talk about this now. He has to. Thiago Motta has to improve. But then again, you say that, and then I was talking to one of our patrons, who's also a Juventus fan. He was saying it's so weird because, on the one hand, the way they build, and it looks okay. It actually looks pretty good in the build-up phase, but as soon as they reach the final third, it's like it all just dies.
There's nothing there, yeah.
And it's not just that they don't have the players up there. It's like they know how to get to the opposition's box, but it's like they haven't downloaded the final 3 pages of the PDF of Thiago Motta's manual. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I don't know, the connection went or something. It's weird. They don't know what the hell they're doing. It just becomes, prayers. And that's a worrying. That's a really, really worrying sign for them. And it's not just this game against Villa. It's not just the decimated squad. It's this season. That's how it's been, and that's just not good enough. And Thiago Motta has to start taking some blame for this, because you can't. Again, no one's expecting him to win the Champions League, or no one's demanding a Scudetto from him, and we know that it's going to take 2 or 3 windows for this to be addressed, and of course even longer perhaps now with all 2 ACLs in defence. But it's still not good enough. There's not enough goals coming from midfield. There's not enough goals coming from anywhere. No. And even if you sell Vlahovic and bring in a new striker, the midfield isn't offering enough threat.
I think that's
a structural issue, and that's something that Thiago Motta has to address.
I mean, this is something that I spoke about even last season. I've said that this is the weakness in Thiago Motta's game. I was even saying it last season. So this doesn't come as a surprise. Maybe it's a surprise just how kind of impotent Juventus have looked in attack this season. Motta needs to find out. I mean, Motta is, I've said it so many times, so I'm repeating myself, but Juventus, when they're in possession of the ball, they do have fantastic patterns of play. They can break out through the press, as they showed against Villa. They can make it up the pitch, they can make it through the midfield, they can make it up into the final third. But once it gets into the final third, they're just completely sterile once they get into the final third. And part of that is down to the fact that they don't push enough men forward, because Motta is so obsessed with not leaving his team open for a transition or a counter-attack. So they're not putting enough men in the box. I mean, if you look at the heat maps of the Juventus players, I mean, there's not enough players in the central attacking areas, like getting into the box, basically. Like Conceição and Yildiz, the wingers, which is another facet of Motta's games. They're so out wide, very kind of Barcelona, school of Barcelona with the wingers. So they have to basically hug the touchline and stretch the pitch as much as possible, which is fine. But you also then need to have that threat in the middle, and there is no threat in the middle. And so I think that Motta needs to look at a way, and maybe it's a case of he needs to get players more into central areas. He also needs to maybe take the shackles off a little bit and take a few more risks. If it maybe leaves you a little bit open on a transition, then so be it. You have to take calculated risks sometimes in football, as in life, really. You have to gamble sometimes. If you don't, then, I think maybe he's overdoing that. So I do think that Motta needs to look at that. There's no sure. I do think, though, there are other reasons. Obviously, the number of injuries, we can't ignore that. I mean, 8 injuries throughout the team. Against Milan, they had to play Weston McKennie up front, who's a midfielder. Against Aston Villa, they had to play Timothy Weah, who's not a striker. At best, he's an outside forward. At best, if not something a little bit deeper, a deeper wide midfielder. He's not a striker. He's not a central number 9 striker. So you're going into games with these players, and you've really got nothing. You've got no one in the centre. Having said that, though, they struggled with Vlahovic as well. But we know the issues with Vlahovic. They predate Motta. Is he good enough? Can he hold the ball up well enough? So I think there is a personnel issue with the strikers. There's also an issue of options. Yildiz and Conceição are basically having to play every single game at the moment, which I thought Conceição was really good. He was the only threat, actually, against Villa. But they've got no options other than Yildiz and Conceição to play right and left, and that means that they're tired. There's no depth. I mean, they've got no one to bring on in attack to change the game, and if you play the same players game in 2 games a week, eventually they're going to tire as well. So I think there's that as well, and then
listen,
it all adds up. It all adds up.
Yeah, but the reason why Conceição is the only threat is because he's the only one who can do something on his own. And that, to me, we've gone from Leao and Inshallah to Conceição and Inshallah. That's what it is. And I expect more from Motta, and especially after the market he's had. It's simply not good enough after 18 matches. It's just not good enough to create this little, to basically be, all right, I'll create a defensive structure, then you guys, I'll bring you to the final just outside the box, then I've got no ideas, go at it. That's just not good enough. That is simply not good enough. And he has to do better. And he has to be able to create something, some sort of identity when you get to the opposition's box, because this Juventus side have nothing when they get to the opposition's box. You can say Vlahovic, Nico Gonzalez, all these players, but even when they were there, they created not much more than this. So this is a Motta problem, and he needs to improve on that. And something has to happen, because this is, it's beyond dreary, and it's just.
Well, he's not he's not getting enough. We're not seeing enough of certain players in going offensively as well. Like Yildiz, we've not had enough. I know he's 19 years old, and you get at that age, you get inconsistency, and he is, like I said as well, he's being overplayed. But we're not seeing enough from Yildiz. How many goals has he scored this season? He had the Inter game, but apart from that,
not even. Well, that's
he's not scoring. He's not creating enough. Yildiz, we're not getting enough from Coop Miners. We need to see more. He was the big signing, 60 million. He hasn't scored a goal for Juventus, and he's been playing as the attacking midfield role. The kind of the 4-2-3-1.
There's several aspects.
He's not scoring enough either. So we're not getting enough from him. Again, it's not. I'm not just picking on the players. Again, this is Motta as well. But I'm saying we're not seeing enough from these players. We expected a lot more. We expected at least 5 or 6 goals from Yildiz. Now we expected a few goals at least from Koopman. He's got 0 for a 60 million player. I mean, that's an issue as well.
I think of course it's an issue, and I'm going to get to Koopman because I've got some notes on him as well. But look, it's again when you get to the just outside the box and it dies, it flatlines. Juventus's creativity and attacking identity flatlines as soon as they get to the opposition's box. And it's not just the Villa game. It's 18 games of this. That's on Motta. It's as simple as that. And he has to improve that. Now, of course, when you buy as many new players as you do, as they have this summer, it's going to take time for them to come together. Luis has been an unmitigated disaster. There's no doubt about that. And Koopmeiners, which leads me nicely to that. I'm not saying this is the case, but I am beginning to entertain the idea that we have another case of Atalanta syndrome. This is a player who, again, works fantastically in Atalanta and Gasperini's system, but when he tries to be used in another system, he cristantes. Very overly exaggeratedly put. I'm not saying I'm there yet, but I'm starting to entertain the idea that this is another case of Atalanta syndrome. Player looks fantastic in the system, take him out of it somewhere else, he just can't deliver. And because it's not just the goals that he hasn't scored, it's not looking good. He's not offering anything really in the final third. And Giuntoli, listen, if you buy that many players and two of your biggest signings, Luis and Koopmeiners, after 18 matches, Luis has been an unmitigated disaster. Koopmeiner's been all right, okay, but not even good. There are questions that need to be asked about how you've constructed this team.
Koopmeiners it's been unacceptable, his performances in the last two games. Against Milan especially, he was horrendous. In this game against Villa as well, not good enough, especially the first half. He barely even touched the ball in the first half. I think he had like 8 touches or 9 touches in the first half. He's not getting on the ball. There are some special circumstances. You know, if you're playing as an attacking midfielder and you have nothing in front of you, it's virtually impossible for you to have any kind of positive impact on the game. You can't do anything. So I do think that there's that's not helping him. I do also personally think he's better in a deeper role anyway. But you know, it's not enough. We're not seeing enough from Koopmeiners. He's supposed to raise the level of the team, and so far he hasn't lifted the level of the team as well. But I do think that there are special circumstances with Koopmeiners, as there is with Motta. The weaknesses with Motta are there. They're clear. I've been talking about them for a year. But there are other circumstances that are making it far more difficult for Motta's game to come through. And I would say the same with Koopmeiners. I mean, if we're talking about the lack of goals, we can't ignore also the fact that if you look certainly if you look at the midfield, and any good team provides goals from the midfield. I think Inter are a great example of that. You know, there's so many goals in Inter's midfield. Everybody can contribute goals in that Inter midfield. Even from the bench players, and that is a huge issue. If you look at Juventus's midfield, there's no goals in there. It's apart from Koopmeiners, who hasn't scored any. There's no goals. I mean, Thuram will score 1 or 2 goals a season. Locatelli 1 or 2 goals a season. Douglas Luiz, when you take away penalties, he's not someone that's got goals in his game. Fagioli's got no goals in his game. McKennie.
But the problem isn't just that,
goals in his game, but I don't think he's good enough.
But if you look at Inter, I'm sorry, but that's actually a really good example. If you look at how Simone Inzaghi plays from the back all the way to the goal line of the opposition, there is a clear identity. It's very versatile. They can play in very many ways. And that's why even technically limited players like Davide Fratesi get so many goals. Yes, he's got that kind of natural intelligence, high IQ in terms of reading the game and his timing of runs, but he's a pretty awful technically.
But he's got goals in his game. He scores a lot.
But the reason why he has, but it's not just that he's got goals in his game. It's not like you're born with goals. It's the fact that there is an attacking identity in the final third that goes all the way from Sommer to the
but even listen, you put these Juventus
Motta doesn't have that.
You put these Juventus midfielders into the Inter team, apart from Koopmeiners and maybe McKennie. Those other midfielders are not going to score many goals. They're not. They haven't got goals. They can't shoot. They don't know how to get into the positions to get in because that's just not their natural game.